If you love military thrillers, this one hooks fast. A wounded SEAL, a compromised hospital, a hidden operative in scrubs, and a conspiracy wrapped inside a bag of evidence powerful enough to shake federal agencies. Lena Brooks doesn't move like a rookie nurse, she moves like someone trained for war. And once the first breach hits, every hallway becomes a battlefield where one wrong call could cost dozens of lives. I want her out of my operating room. The surgeon's voice was pure ice. He never looked up from the man's open chest on the table before him. He spoke as if Lena Brooks, standing just 3 feet away with the next instrument, was nothing more than a piece of furniture. To him, she was a ghost in the room. The patient on the table had about 6 minutes before his heart failed completely, and the surgeon in charge had just dismissed her. Every other nurse in the room froze. No one dared to move or even breathe. With a soft, deliberate click, Lena placed the tool on the tray, turned around, and walked out without saying a word. If this is your first time here, please subscribe and tell me what city you are tuning in from in the comments. I am very excited to see where this story goes. Please stay with me until the very end. I promise it will be worth it. For the past 11 weeks, Lena Brooks had been a nurse on the trauma floor at Mercy General Hospital. That was 11 weeks spent working double shifts and learning where all the best supplies were tucked away. It was 11 weeks of memorizing every single patient's name because she believed every person was important. She always showed up 30 minutes before her shift was scheduled to start. That little bit of extra time was the difference between being prepared and being rushed. And Lena Brooks had not been rushed in over 8 years. But no one at Mercy General knew that about her. In truth, nobody at the hospital knew anything about her, and that is exactly how she wanted it. She filled out the paperwork, she aced her nursing exams, she came in early every single day, and she never caused a problem. Her official file said she was 26 years old. It also said she had earned her nursing degree from a state college in Virginia. The file mentioned her previous job was with a government contractor, a position she was not allowed to discuss. The Human Resources Department had only asked about it one time. A clerk from that office made a single phone call. After that one call, they never brought it up again. What her file did not mention were her 4 years of service in the United States Marine Corps. It completely left out that she had been part of a scout sniper team based out of Camp Pendleton. It did not show that she had finished 3 separate tours of duty, 2 of which were in places that are still classified. And the file failed to note that she had more confirmed long-distance kills than any other female soldier in her unit's history. The record was silent on all of this because she had gone through the official channels to have her military service kept private. The Marine Corps, to their honor, respected her wishes. So in this place, she was just a nurse. A good one, according to most people, and an extremely quiet one. She always wore her dark hair pulled back in a tidy bun. She wore no jewelry or rings, and she kept her fingernails cut short because long nails could cause trouble. She moved through the hospital with the same grace she had used in the field. Her movements were fluid, she kept her center of gravity low, and her eyes were always scanning. She was instinctively mapping out exits, identifying potential threats, and taking note of every face in every room. Her boss was a woman named Diane Kowalski, who had managed the trauma floor for 19 years. She had the weary attitude of someone who had seen it all before. During Lena's first week, Diane told the other nurses that the new girl showed promise but did not have enough experience. She commented that Lena just needed more time on the job and would probably be fine in a year or 2. Lena had heard that conversation, but she chose not to say anything to set the record straight. She just went back to her work and put her mind on other things. The Special Forces team arrived on a Tuesday at 2:37 in the afternoon. Lena was certain of the time because she was always aware of the time. She was applying a fresh bandage to a 63-year-old man named Frank. He had taken a fall from a ladder at his son's house and had broken 3 of his ribs. That is when she heard the ambulance bay doors open in a way that felt wrong. It was not the usual gentle sound of a normal emergency. This sound was harsher and much faster. Then she heard the boots. They were not work boots. They were not the sounds of the hospital staff or the soft-soled shoes of her fellow nurses. These were combat boots, hitting the floor with a purpose that suggested their owners were not used to being kept waiting. She finished wrapping Frank's wound, secured the tape, and told him she would return to check on him in 40 minutes. Then, she walked out into the main hallway. There were 6 of them. They were all enormous men. The kind of size that is built from constant training, grueling workouts, and not very much sleep. 3 of them were wearing civilian clothes that just did not fit them correctly, because normal clothes never do on men built like that. 2 of them were still wearing parts of their combat gear, including armored vests. Their weapons were probably left at the entrance or in their truck. She could not be sure. The 6th man was the one on the gurney. He was the only one that mattered. He was not conscious. A bandage was wrapped around his left side, and it had been put on with incredible expertise. It was tight and perfectly placed, with no flaws. It was the type of bandage you learn to apply while under enemy attack, not the kind they show you in a classroom. But dark red was already soaking through the white gauze. That meant the wound was very deep and he was bleeding somewhere inside his body. His skin had a pale, unhealthy color. She could see his chest rising and falling, but his breathing was shallow and irregular. The tallest of the 5 men who were awake was the one in charge. He stood about 6 feet 4 inches tall and was built like a brick wall. He had a square jaw that seemed to be cut from stone and a scar that ran from his left ear all the way to his lip. She would learn his name later, Petty Officer First Class, Elias Cord. But at that moment, he was just the man giving the orders, and he was not asking for anything. "We need a surgeon immediately, not in 5 minutes, right now." The head nurse at the front desk was a good man by the name of Marcus. He was great at his job, but he was not prepared for a situation like this. He said, "Sir, I have to get your patient admitted into our system first." The tall man replied, "He does not need to be admitted. He needs to be on a surgical table. Where is your chief surgeon? Sir, if you could just... Where is your surgeon?" It was no longer a question. Lena saw all the blood drain from Marcus's face. A small, trained part of her mind noted the positions of all 5 standing men. She calculated the distance to the emergency alarm button. She noticed that 2 of them were watching the hallway behind them, not the reception desk. That told her they were not worried about the hospital workers. They were concerned about someone who might have followed them here. That was a very useful piece of information. That was something she would remember. Dr. Hartwell was already coming down the hall. She must have heard the boots, too. She came around the corner with 2 surgical nurses right behind her. She took one single look at the man on the gurney and said, "Take him to trauma room 2, as she pointed down the hallway. Instantly, everyone started moving. The Special Forces men moved right alongside the gurney. They guarded it on 3 sides as if they were still in a military formation, which they basically were. Lena moved with the group, but she did it in a way that no one would notice. She walked at a normal pace, grabbed a patient file from a nearby rack as if she had business there, and she slipped into trauma room 2 right behind them. In a flash, the room was dangerously crowded. Dr. Hartwell began shouting out orders. Her surgical nurses moved quickly to follow her directions. 2 of the soldiers stood guard at the door without anyone telling them to. It was either a trained reaction or a standard procedure. She could not tell which. The other 2 soldiers came into the room and immediately got in the way of the medical staff, which was quickly becoming a big problem. Lena went to the right side of the gurney. She started to cut away the field bandage before anyone even thought to ask her. She had done this exact thing many times before, not in a hospital setting, but she had done it. The injury beneath it was a gunshot wound that had gone completely through his left side. It had missed his spine, but it probably hit a kidney. Judging by the amount of blood, it had definitely hit something else, too. She had an intravenous kit ready in her hand before Dr. Hartwell even asked for it. Hartwell took it from her without even seeing who was offering it. Then she glanced up, saw Lena, and then instantly focused back on her patient without a word. That was the correct decision. Lena had to give her credit for that. But then Elias Cord put his hand on her shoulder, and it was not a friendly touch. His hand was heavy, like a sack of bricks. As soon as she felt that pressure, her entire body became perfectly still. It was a type of stillness she had mastered in combat training, a signal that a quiet voice in her head was screaming at her to be ready. "You are just a nurse," he said. "This is a surgical matter. You should leave." She did not even look at him. His blood pressure is falling. He is going to need a second intravenous line, and your soldiers need to get out of this room so the doctor can do her job. His voice was sharp. "I was not asking for your opinion." "I am aware," she answered, her eyes fixed on the patient. He just glared at her. She never looked away from her work. Dr. Hartwell's voice sliced through the tension. "I need a better light on this, and I need to know his blood type. If it is not in his file, tell me immediately." Without looking up, Lena stated, "He is B positive. The information is tattooed on his right forearm. She saw it when she cut his sleeve away." For a brief second, the room fell silent. Dr. Hartwell said, "Excellent. Get his blood tested and matched to be certain." Then, in a lower voice that everyone could still hear, she said, "Elias, get your team out of my trauma room. All of them." Elias was visibly annoyed. Lena saw him pause for a moment before he spoke. "We are not leaving him," the doctor corrected him. "You are not abandoning him. You will be standing in the hall, out of my team's way while we work to save his life. That is a significant difference. Now, please go." Silence followed again. Lena felt his eyes on her but did not turn. Finally, he stepped away. The door shut. She heard Dr. Hartwell take a deep breath before her voice turned strictly professional. It was sharp and clear, asking for vitals and instruments. Lena moved in perfect sync with her. She had a special ability to understand how other people worked. This talent made her an asset anywhere in the world. She could join any team's process, becoming a help rather than a problem. They worked like a single person for 47 minutes. The patient on the operating table was Petty Officer Second Class Danny Reyes. Lena knew this because she saw his dog tag while they prepared him for surgery. He had a blade wound in his side that was less than 4 hours old. It was not a knife wound, but something much longer. Lena kept this thought to herself. She simply handed over surgical tools, watched the monitors, and gave information to Dr. Hartwell before the doctor even had to ask. After about 20 minutes, the surgeon no longer second-guessed the nurse helping her. When it was all over, Danny Reyes was in stable condition and on his way to the intensive care unit. Dr. Hartwell pulled off her gloves and just stared at Lena for a long time. "How long have you worked on this floor?" the doctor finally asked. 11 weeks, Lena replied. 11 weeks? The doctor said nothing else. She simply turned and left. Lena cleaned up her station, recorded the supplies they had used, and returned to her other patient, Frank, who was healing from broken ribs. The soldiers were waiting in the lounge near the trauma area. All 5 of them were standing. Men like them seldom sit in such places. They were positioned around the room in a relaxed formation. As Lena passed the entrance, Elias Cord saw her. She kept walking without a pause. She heard him say something quietly to the man beside him. She could not hear the words. She thought again about the injury Danny Reyes had, its specific angle and depth. It came from something much longer than a knife, and it missed his spine by less than 2 centimeters. That kind of injury is not something that occurs in a training accident. An injury like that happens when a very skilled person wants to deliver a message, not create a fatality. Someone had meant for Danny Reyes to live, at least for a short time. She put the thought aside and went on with her duties. The rest of her afternoon was completely normal. She changed a few bandages. She made notes in a few patient charts, She sat with a woman named Pauline on the fourth floor. Pauline was frightened about her upcoming biopsy results and needed a friend more than a nurse. At 6:30, Lena ate a little of a sandwich in the staff room. She heard two other nurses discussing a television show she had never seen. She smiled when it seemed like the right time to do so. She was a master at fitting in. At 7:42, she was at the nursing station on the third floor when she noticed the men walk in through the main doors. There were three of them. They did not come in through the ambulance entrance, which was the first strange detail. They were wearing street clothes, which was the second. One of them carried a bag with a peculiar shape for its purpose. That was the last piece of information that made all her senses scream with alarm. It was the feeling she was trained to notice, the one she got in the field just before something awful happened. She had spent 4 years learning to read people the same way most individuals read road signs. The process was fast, automatic, and sure. She was watching three men move through a public area in a way that was clearly rehearsed. They were not looking around. They did not act like they were lost. They were not there to visit a sick loved one. They moved with a clear mission and in a tight formation. One man was in the lead, with two others behind and on his sides, maintaining a specific distance. That was military spacing. It was the kind of formation used for a tactical maneuver. These men were not from any part of the American military, because she knew what that looked like. This was something else. They passed the information desk without a glance, walked by the chapel, and then made a left toward the elevators. She knew their destination. She pulled out her phone. She sent a message to a number she was not supposed to have. She had memorized it from a piece of paper she had watched being shredded years before. The text had only one character. The people receiving it would know what it meant. Then she went to Marcus, who was at his desk looking exhausted from his shift. "Hey," she said, "I need you to do something for me." "What is it?" he answered. "I need you to go calmly, very calmly, and tell Dr. Hartwell she should consider moving her patient in the third-floor intensive care unit. Be casual, do not rush. Then, I need you to ask if anyone here can oversee those military men in the waiting room." Marcus just looked at her. "Lena, will you please just do it for me?" She cut in. "Well, yes, but thank you," she said. As she was already turning to go, she went toward the stairs. An elevator is a box, and a box is a trap. She would not get stuck in a trap on a Tuesday in November, not in a hospital in Virginia if she could help it. She climbed the stairwell, taking the steps two at a time. She moved quietly, her hand barely touching the handrail. She stepped out onto the third floor from behind the fire door and paused. It was a very long hallway. The nursing station at the far end had 2 employees. A man she did not know was by the elevators, looking at his phone. But he was holding the phone at an odd angle, likely using the screen's reflection to watch the hall. She moved the other way. She took the longer path around the floor, using a service corridor near the radiology area. She got to the intensive care unit from the east side. Just as she came through the second set of doors, she nearly bumped into Elias Cord. He was propped against the wall outside Danny's room with his arms folded. He studied her as if she were a difficult puzzle. "You are the floor nurse," he said. "Petty officer," she replied. His attention sharpened. "I never gave you my rank." "No," she said calmly. "You did not." He slowly unfolded his arms. "What are you doing up here?" he asked. "My job," she told him. She kept her voice steady, her hands where he could see them, and her posture relaxed. "And right now, my job is to tell you that 3 men entered the hospital about 6 minutes ago. Their pattern of movement does not match any normal civilian behavior that I recognize. One of them was carrying a bag. The change in him was immediate. His whole posture changed. It was not a big, obvious motion, but she felt it like the temperature in the room had suddenly dropped. His entire body grew tense and alert. His voice became cold and professional. "Where are they?" he asked. They turned left near the elevators on the main floor. I do not know what floor they picked. The man standing by your elevator on this level has been there since I came upstairs. He is watching the hallway. Elias stared at her for several seconds. It was not a nice look. It was the look of a person doing complex math in his head at top speed. You need to return to your floor, he commanded. You have 4 men, and your security is not fully in place, she responded. How important is Danny Reyes to the people who used that blade on him? He became completely still. How do you know about the blade? He asked. The wound. The entry was at a 40-degree angle, with a depth that indicates a blade between 18 and 24 inches long. The blade's path missed the spine by a margin too thin to be an accident. That is not an injury from a fight. That injury was created to send a clear message. She stopped. So, will you continue to ask me questions, or will you secure this floor? For 3 complete seconds, Elias Cord was silent. She counted each one in her head. Then, he grabbed the radio on his hip. His voice was very quiet and totally sure. Ghost Hawk, PIP code lock, 3rd floor is compromised. My radio says 3 unknown men are inside, maybe a 4th near the lift. Reyes stays put until I say so. Acknowledge. 3 voices immediately replied. Understood, understood, understood. He turned to face her. Who are you? He asked. He had already moved beyond asking what she was or how she knew things. He asked the question you only ask when you meet someone who changes everything. She held his gaze without hesitation. For now, I am the nurse who knows this hospital better than your team. A closet in the East Hall looks over the garage. North service stairs need a key card and skip the main lifts. The room near Danny's is empty. Has been all day. And your man from the elevator is coming here now. Elias turned his head sharply. But she was gone. She was already in the vacant room before the man got close. She flattened her body against the wall next to the doorframe. She left the door open just a few inches. It gave her a perfect, hidden view of the entire hall. This was an old, valuable skill. Lena heard Elias's calm voice, as if he were asking for the time. Are you lost? The man replied with a hard-to-place accent. It seemed Eastern European, possibly Russian, but it was just a guess. He said, I need the men's room, Elias told him. End of the hall, on your left. She heard his steps pass her door. Through the small gap, she got a look at him. He was large, in his 50s, and limped slightly on his right side. His right hand seemed relaxed, but she knew it was a fake calm. It was the posture of someone keeping a hand near a hidden gun. The man took the left turn, but the bathrooms were to the right. Lena knew the floor plan by heart. When she emerged, Elias was watching the man retreat. Without looking at her, Elias murmured, He is in the East Hall. A service stairwell is about 50 feet ahead. He wants a better angle. Can you get there first? But Lena was already moving. The service corridor was narrow, buzzing with fluorescent lights. She moved silently, her breath even. She was slipping back into a role she had abandoned 4 years before, the day she left the military base for good. That person was never truly gone, just locked away deep inside. She reached the stairwell door a full 8 seconds ahead of his heavy boots. She slipped through, climbed 4 stairs, and peered through the wire mesh glass. He entered the hallway with clear intent now. He pulled something from his jacket. It was not a phone or his keys. It was small, black, and familiar in his grip. She had maybe 4 seconds, 5 at most. She opened the door, moved behind him, and used a simple, calm voice. Pardon me, sir. You cannot be back here. He twisted around, hiding the weapon behind his leg. His mind was racing, trying to figure out if she was a threat. She already knew. The moment he went for the gun, she moved. She closed the distance as her right hand shot up. She performed 4 precise actions in less than 2 seconds. It was far too quick and clean for any nurse. He went down without making a noise. She snatched the gun out of the air. Looking down at him, she breathed in deeply, then out, embracing the familiar calm that followed. Down the corridor, Elias Cord was completely still. He could only stare at her, shocked. Two of his soldiers materialized behind him, the way special forces do. One glance told them the whole story. No one spoke. Then, a shorter soldier named Ghost looked at the body, then at Lena. He asked quietly, "Which unit were you with?" She checked the man's pulse. It was steady. She did not want any casualties here. She rose, tucked the pistol into her scrubs, and faced Ghost. "I am a nurse," she replied. Ghost glanced at Elias, who was looking at her in a completely different way. This was not his condescending look from the operating room. It was not his focused stare from before. It was a look she recognized from combat. It was the expression of a man whose world just turned upside down. He finally spoke. "There are 2 more enemies inside." "No, 3, she corrected. "There is also the man with the bag. The bag is the prize, so he is coming soon." As if on command, Elias's radio sparked. A strained voice reported, "Trouble at the south stairwell. 2 armed men." Then, a deep tremor ran through the entire hospital. That was not a failing generator or a tremor. She recognized the feeling of a blast, even through 6 floors. It was a controlled explosion, meant for a door. What came next was not screams, but something much worse, a deep and sudden silence. Then the alarms began to shriek, followed by footsteps. They were the wrong kind of footsteps, not disciplined soldiers, but a larger force rushing up the south stairs. Elias looked at his team, then back to her. She unpinned her hospital badge and glanced at the tired face in the photo. She set it down on the window ledge. "We need to secure Danny Reyes behind 2 locked doors," she said with authority. "I need body armor, a radio for your channel, and a rifle." Elias studied her for another second. He then unclipped the extra radio from his belt and handed it over. She accepted it. The plastic was still warm as she attached it to her collar. The feeling was disturbingly familiar, something she had tried to leave behind. But this was not the time for old thoughts. "They have taken the south stairs," she announced. They came in through the parking garage. The bomb was on the service door from the 2nd level. That door is reinforced steel. They needed a specific charge to breach it so quickly. This was planned. Ghost questioned her. "How can you be so sure it was that door?" "It is the only door on this side of the hospital with no security camera," she explained, looking at Elias. "They did their homework. They have been inside before." Elias clenched his jaw. "How many are we facing?" "I counted 3, plus a driver. That makes 4, maybe even 6. The final man has the bag. He is either waiting for the signal or he placed the explosive." She paused to let them process. "This is all for that bag. I was right before. Its contents will change everything." "What makes you think that?" Elias asked. "The other men were just a distraction. They carried nothing. The man with the bag is the objective." A heavy-set soldier with a scarred hand spoke up. "Elias, we need to move Reyes immediately." "She already told you where," Lena stated. 2 locked doors. The intensive care unit has a secure room with a card reader and a steel door. "Get him in there. Post 2 men on the door and lock it from the inside. Nothing happens until I get your confirmation on the radio." The scarred soldier looked at Elias for approval. Elias looked back at Lena. She could almost see the gears turning in his head as his plan was rewritten around her. He gave the orders. "Hawk, Pip, move Reyes to that room now. Secure that door." He then faced Ghost. "We take the south stairs." He finally met Lena's eyes. "The north side is yours," she replied. "I have to know what is in the bag." "Me too," he said. "Then we should find its owner before your soldiers do. And we need to be silent. Because if he feels cornered in here with all these people—" "I get it," Elias cut in. "Are you sure?" she countered. Your team will back him into a corner, and a desperate man with that bag will do something irreversible. Elias was silent for 2 long seconds. The only sound was the distant wail of alarms. So you want us to avoid scaring him? Elias finally asked. No, she said. I want you to let me get to him before you do. So what is the plan? He asked after a short pause. I will pinpoint his location for you. Your team can then neutralize him as they wish. I just need to find him first. Ghost made a sharp, disbelieving sound that was nearly a chuckle. She recognized that noise. It was the sound of someone accepting a new reality. Finally, Elias consented. Report in on the radio every 3 minutes. If you miss even one call, I am personally coming after you. I get it. And with that, she moved toward the north wing. This hallway was significantly quieter. The sirens were distant here. The lights remained on, a sign of a very controlled explosion. She was facing real experts. Experts use only the necessary amount of force. A small charge to breach a single door, a minimal team to secure the space, and silence until the moment is right. She walked past a storage room and a vacant examination room. A quick look inside the nurse's station revealed it was empty, aside from a mobile medical cart. 2 drawers were pulled open. This suggested a recent, hasty departure. She paused, then doubled back for a closer inspection. The cart's 2 drawers were open. The lower drawer, the one for emergency kits, had been cleared out. She stood motionless, asking herself why a non-medical person would require a trauma kit. The situation was becoming clear. A person was hurt. There had been a fight, somewhere between the garage and this level, and now the injured party was hiding. Her gaze swept the hall, but the white floor appeared spotless. Then she knelt down, and at a certain angle, the light caught a small, dark stain near the baseboard. It was a fresh streak, about 6 inches in length. She got up and crept down the hall to the north stairwell door, just 8 feet from her. She flattened herself against the wall, an instinct from her past. Holding her breath, she listened intently. On the other side, she heard difficult, ragged breaths. A person was clearly struggling with an injury. She watched the handle of the door. From the other side, the handle started to turn. She moved back a couple of steps to squarely face the door. She clasped her hands in front of her, taking on the calm pose of a nurse. Her voice was perfectly level as she asked, "Sir, are you okay in there?" The handle stopped moving. A moment passed, then the door opened wide. The man who appeared was a complete surprise. She had to adjust her plan immediately, but she was good at thinking fast. He was young, maybe in his mid-30s. His features, which could have been pleasant, were now strained and tense. He was clearly hiding something important. He was clutching a bag's strap with both hands, pulling it close to his right side. His left hand was shaking, not from fear, but from losing too much blood. A new trauma kit hung from his belt, still sealed and unusable. He was unable to help himself while holding the bag so tightly. He noticed her and froze. She gave him the same reassuring look she offered every patient, a look that said she had the situation handled. "You have been hurt," she stated simply. He said nothing. "It is on your left side," she added. "The injury looks like it is just under your rib cage." She glanced at his left arm, which he held firmly against his body. "That injury needs to be treated," she told him. "Otherwise, you will be too weak from blood loss to finish what you started." He scanned her quickly, looking for any danger. He looked for a weapon, then a radio, and his eyes stopped on the device on her collar. His expression grew stern. "Who are you talking to on that?" he demanded. "My team," she answered. He scoffed in disbelief. "You are a nurse. A nurse does not have a team." Her voice was calm as she said, "This one does." She took a slow step forward, keeping her hands in plain sight. Her tone was serious. "I am not going to hurt you. You need to understand that." Whatever you are doing here, 63 patients are on this level. Another 42 are one floor down. They are not involved. Now, let me look at that wound, she urged. He just shook his head. The patients do not matter to me. I already know that, she answered. You came here because of Danny Reyes. Hearing that name made the tight control on his face completely vanish. He had the look of someone who had shouldered a heavy burden by himself for a very long time and had just found an ally. She knew that look. She knew she was right. The injury was a message, not a fatal blow. This also meant his connection to Danny Reyes was personal, not professional. What is inside the bag? She asked. He looked at her for a long time, then spoke. Proof, he answered. She let the silence hang, waiting. Proof of who sent the attackers? She asked softly. He shook his head once more. It proves the reason for the attack. These papers contain a name so big, people will refuse to believe it without this. He pressed his arm harder against his side, and she saw his face go pale for a moment. My enemies do not want me dead. They want what is in this bag. This bag proves everything they did. It shows their orders. His voice grew faint as he weakened from the bleeding. There is a big difference, you see. The wound was a punishment, but the cover-up is the actual crime. At that moment, her radio made a static sound. The clear, calm voice of Elias came over the radio. North Team, what is your status? The man's eyes darted to her radio. She kept eye contact with him as she raised her hand to the device. North sector is clear, she said into it. I have found an injured civilian who needs medical attention. He came in from the north stairwell. She took a breath and continued. He is not a threat. I repeat, stand down. The response came back in just 3 seconds. Roger that. We are holding here. You have 2 minutes. She reached her open hand out to the man. Let me hold the bag, she said. He clutched the strap even harder. I am not taking it from you, she explained. But you cannot hold on to it while I treat you. If I do not stop that bleeding, you have about 6 minutes before you pass out. I will guard the bag. I will keep it on this level, she promised. But I need you to let me work. His eyes moved from her open hand up to her face. She stayed completely motionless, knowing one wrong move would look like a threat. Finally, he offered her the bag. When she took it, she was surprised by how heavy it was. She placed it on the ground by her feet and helped him sit with his back to the wall. She unclipped the trauma kit from his belt, ripped open the packaging, and started treating him. It was a neat slice, 5 inches long and very deep. The cut had barely avoided a major artery. She worked quickly and expertly. He spoke through gritted teeth, asking, How do I know you will not just hand over the bag? You do not, she said honestly. But I have a strong suspicion about what is inside. I know who it points to, and I know it nearly cost Danny Reyes his life. You can trust that I understand how important it is, or not. It does not matter. I am treating this wound because it is what I am supposed to do. He let out a noise that was almost a chuckle. You are definitely not just a nurse. I am a nurse, she corrected him. But I am also a few other things. Once the bandage was on tight, his breathing evened out, but he still looked pale. She got to her feet, picked up the bag, and helped him stand. He took her hand. Elias and Ghost were waiting for them around the next bend. When Elias saw her supporting the injured man while holding the bag, his expression was complicated. He was not angry, just deeply confused. He looked like a person whose entire view of reality was being shaken. Ghost's eyes, however, locked onto the bag. Is that the package? He asked. It is, she said. This needs to be stored somewhere safe, and it has to be given to someone with the right authority. I will not hand this evidence over to just any official here. She stared directly at Elias. You need to make a phone call right now, she told him. I am one step ahead of you, Elias replied, holding up his phone. The man she had treated, who remained anonymous, rested tiredly against the wall. What happened to the other three? He asked. We have 2 contained in the south stairwell, Ghost answered. She took care of the third. The man gave a slight nod. There is a 4th person in a car outside. He has a remote detonator. Elias looked up from his screen. A remote for what, exactly? Before the man could answer, she cut in. The bomb on parking level P2 was just to open the door. A remote outside means that was a diversion. There is a second, bigger bomb, the man said in a low voice. It is on a support beam between parking levels P1 and P2. It is on a timer, but it also has a remote. The clock started ticking the moment they came inside. The hallway fell completely silent. How long do we have? She asked. He looked right at her. The timer began 19 minutes ago. The second I walked through that door. She turned to Elias, but he was already moving. Ghost, get every single person in this building to the East Wing. This is real. Get all patients and staff out immediately. He moved fast, his voice low and urgent on the phone. It was a tone she recognized, the sound of a leader taking control. Get the bomb squad to the parking garage now, I said urgently. There is another device on a main support column, and the clock is ticking. Yes, I mean this very second. The numbers were already spinning in my mind. 19 minutes gone. Take away the time we just spent talking. That left maybe 14 minutes, maybe even less. I looked at the injured man. Are you able to walk? He nodded. Good. Then we need to move. I gave the heavy bag back to him. Keep this safe until the right person gets here. Do you understand me? Do not set it down. Do not hand it to anyone unless Elias introduces them to you personally. He took the bag. Why are you trusting me with this a second time? He wondered. I met his gaze. Because you have already shed blood for it. When people fight for something, they do not give up easily, I told him. Besides, I have another task to take care of. I left him there and reached Elias in 4 quick steps. He was still on the phone but looked up at me. I could see something new in his eyes, a respect he did not have 20 minutes ago. The dynamic had changed. I spoke in a low voice. The trigger man is in a car outside. The disposal team will take care of it, he assured me. The fastest they can get here is 12 minutes, I replied. Our clock is at 14 minutes, if we are very fortunate. That leaves a 2-minute gap, if I did my numbers right. I kept up with his fast walk. And that man is going to flee the second he sees us evacuating this place. That man was holding the detonator, not just a timer. Somebody needed to stop him before the bomb squad could arrive. Elias stopped dead in his tracks. I stopped too. We stood there in the hallway, and I could practically see the gears turning in his head. One part of him wanted to dismiss me, to see just the nurse, but that side was quickly being overruled by the man who had seen me in action for the last 40 minutes. He finally broke the silence. What is your actual name? He was not asking about Lena Brooks, the nurse. He wanted to know who I was before. I looked him straight in the eye. Corporal Lena Brooks. Scout Sniper. 4th Marine Regiment. I served 3 tours. The words filled the space between us. Elias, I do not miss. He stared at me for a long moment, taking it all in. At last, he gave his decision. Our vehicle is in the ambulance bay. Inside, there is a duffel bag with a rifle. He continued. It has a level 3 lock. The combination is the year the Marines were established, followed by 2 zeros. I answered without hesitation. 1775. He told me, You have 12 minutes. I was already gone. The stairwell was clear, and I flew down 4 flights in under 30 seconds. I burst through the service door into the ambulance bay. I moved with a deliberate speed that ate up the ground. The team's black SUV was waiting at the other end. I reached it, grabbed the bag from the back, and had the lock open in 3 seconds flat. Inside was a Mark 12 rifle, built for accuracy, complete with a suppressor and a full magazine. My hands moved across the weapon, like seeing a dear friend I thought was lost forever. I pulled the rifle out, threw the sling over my shoulder, and positioned myself at the edge of the bay. From there, I had a clear line of sight to the garage and the street, while staying completely in the shadows. It took me 40 seconds to find his car. It was just a normal black sedan on the north side of the road, perfectly placed to watch the garage. The car was on, with one man in the driver's seat. I settled in behind a concrete support column. I have made much harder shots. Shots in terrible wind, in pouring rain, at moving targets from hundreds of meters out with nothing but my own focus. This was just a simple 80 meters. The tinted window made it a little tricky, but it was not a problem. I peered through the scope. The man was staring at the hospital entrance, holding a phone. I could see him checking the screen, most likely waiting for a message from his friends inside. A message that would never arrive. I inhaled slowly, exhaled halfway, and held my aim. My radio clicked twice. It was Elias. 2 clicks means do not shoot. I held my position for 3 seconds. Then 5. I kept the phone in my sights, my mind flashing to Danny Reyes in surgery, a reminder of the stakes. I thought about the 63 people on the 3rd floor and the 42 more on the floors beneath them. I also thought about the bag of evidence. A secret so big, a Navy SEAL's life was considered a worthy price to keep it safe. The man in the car looked at his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. I did not move. I did not need to shoot yet. I just needed 10 more seconds, that was all. I learned long ago that the most difficult part of this job is not pulling the trigger, it is the waiting. His phone screen lit up. He looked from the phone to the building and back again. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. I could hear shouting from the east wing. The staff was getting patients out. Now the evacuation was impossible to miss. Through the windows, I could see staff wheeling people out, and the driver could see it too. I watched the moment he put it all together. I watched him decide what to do next. His thumb started to press down. I fired. The suppressor softened the sound, but it was not perfectly quiet. They never are. The car window exploded as the phone clattered against the dashboard. His hand was nowhere near it. I had not shot at the phone, and I had not shot at him. My bullet went through the front wheel and destroyed the axle. The car was disabled. The impact triggered its alarms, creating a whole new distraction for him. In the chaos of the next 5 seconds, the bomb squad came over the radio, announcing they were on site. I let out my breath, got to my feet, and slung the rifle onto my back. A single click came over the radio. Elias. 1 click means situation clear. I stood there in the ambulance bay, feeling the cool air, listening to the sounds of the evacuation. I remembered a gray morning when I left my base, convinced I was leaving that world behind for good. It seemed I was wrong. I had just traded one battlefield for another. Somewhere in that hospital, a woman named Pauline was probably thinking about her test results again, and Frank would be needing fresh bandages for his 3 broken ribs, and Dr. Hartwell was in the middle of it all, making certain her patients were out of harm's way. The hospital was safe because, 12 minutes earlier, a man I helped in a corridor had trusted me, and I had trusted him right back. I took my hospital ID badge from the windowsill where I had left it. Someone had moved it to a supply cart for me. I had no clue who. I pinned it back on my uniform. Then I turned and went back inside, walking straight into the organized chaos. I passed gurneys, IV stands, and bewildered patients. The other staff members were calmly managing the entire situation with a special blend of skill, adrenaline that I knew all too well. It was how I had survived for 4 years. A few people noticed the rifle on my back. They would give it a quick look, and then their eyes would dart away. People tend to look away when things get too real. I took the rifle off, tucked it under my arm with the barrel pointed down, and found a nurse I recognized. Her name was Teresa. She was a solid nurse, calm and with 2 years on the job. I asked her, "Who is left on the third floor?" Teresa was steering a wheelchair and holding a patient chart. She glanced at me, then at the rifle, before answering. "We still have 6 who are difficult to transport. They need a full crew. Diane is up there with them. Is anyone else there?" I asked. "Dr. Hartwell is back upstairs. She said she was not going to abandon her post-surgery patients." That sounded just like her. I carried the rifle to the supply room behind the nurse's station and locked it away with my key. Then I headed for the stairs. The third floor was eerily quiet. All the beds near the doors had been cleared. The last 6 patients were still there, connected to a web of tubes and machines that needed a doctor's permission to be moved. They were too delicate to be taken into the hallway. Diane was at her desk, phone pressed to her ear. She looked like a person who has handled emergencies forever. Her face was set, her gaze was sharp, and she was not about to be distracted. She noticed me and told the person on the phone, "Hold on 1 second." She faced me. "Where have you been? Helping out?" I gave her a simple answer. Diane studied me for a moment. It was the kind of look a manager with 19 years of service gives a good, but still green, nurse. But the nurse in front of her now had dried blood on her arm and a deep calm that felt more like it was drilled into her than born with her. Diane went back to her call. "I need a full transport team on the third floor. I have 6 patients who are not mobile, and I need them moved in the next." She glanced at me. 8 minutes, I told her. 10 at the most. Diane relayed the information, ended the call, and then said, "The bomb squad is in the garage. I am aware. They will handle it. The second device is on the main support column. It is on a timer, but the remote is useless now." Without waiting for Diane to ask how she knew, Lena went to the first remaining patient. He was a 71-year-old man named Warren, admitted 3 days ago with a heart condition. He was wide awake, looking at Lena with the sharp eyes of a man who knew true danger when he saw it. "Are we in trouble?" he asked. "We are being careful," Lena replied. "There is a big difference." "Yes," he nodded. "Careful is good." She checked his tubes and monitor, planning how to move him with a portable unit. Behind her, Dr. Hartwell burst through the fire door, pulling on gloves as she moved. She headed straight for a patient's room without a word, every movement precise and focused. That was Hartwell. That was Dr. Hartwell, all business and purpose. As Lena adjusted Warren's intravenous stand, Elias Kaur entered through the same fire door. He carried himself differently now than he had that afternoon. Before, he was a powerful man, radiating a dismissive energy as if he owned any room he entered. The power was still there, but the arrogance was gone. It was replaced by a look of weariness and respect, the quiet discomfort of a man who had been deeply wrong. He walked directly to Lena, ignoring Diane and Hartwell. He spoke only to her. "The bomb squad has eyes on the device." This was much harder than anyone expected. They needed 11 minutes for a safe disarming. The clock showed just 7 remaining. "I know," she said, meeting his gaze. They could not shut it down remotely. This model had a mechanical trigger and a digital backup. Their hands had to be on it. Their only choice was to move faster. She turned back to Warren to adjust his drip. Warren watched Elias with a knowing look, the kind that recognizes a military man in any clothing. He asked softly, "Young man, will this hospital still be standing in 10 minutes?" Elias met his gaze. For a moment, his professional mask slipped, revealing a hint of the man beneath. He answered, "Sir, we are doing everything humanly possible to ensure that it is." Warren considered this, then gave a small nod. "All right, I trust you." His gaze shifted from Lena to Elias, then back. He settled into his pillow. "If that is true, then I have nothing to worry about." Lena's expression remained perfectly neutral as she moved to the next patient. Ghost appeared 2 minutes after Elias. The 2 men stood by the nurse's station, their voices low and urgent. Lena continued her work, checking patients and planning the evacuation sequence. She caught bits of their conversation. She heard the name Vasek, the patient she had treated, who was now in a secure room on the second floor with 2 soldiers on guard. She also heard a phone number being relayed to someone, likely being woken up on the other side of the world. Ghost mentioned 2 men in the south stairway, but she could not hear the details, only that the situation was handled. Then she heard Elias ask a question. "Where did she get her military training?" Ghost replied. "I pulled her file. Camp Pendleton Scout Sniper. 4 years. 3 tours. Her old commanding officer said she was the best he ever saw. He also said she left the service for her own reasons, and he never learned why." There was a short pause before Elias spoke again. "I think I understand the reason." His voice was softer, lacking its usual command. Lena kept working. With 6 minutes and 40 seconds left, the radio on Elias's hip came to life. A voice said, "The package is secure. I repeat, the secondary package is disabled." The timer was stopped with 4 minutes and 11 seconds remaining. Lena heard Diane let out a trembling breath behind her. She heard Dr. Hartwell mutter something that was either a prayer or a curse. On a day like this, the two sounded almost the same, but Lena simply continued working. Warren's intravenous line still needed monitoring. The patient in the next room was due for pain medicine in 40 minutes, and the man recovering from surgery in the corner had a slight fever that had been missed while everyone was focused on not dying. Those duties did not disappear just because the immediate danger had passed. That was something people never understood about the world she came from. A crisis does not clear away your responsibilities. It just creates more of them. Elias walked over to her. She was reading a patient's chart and did not look up. She held the chart between them like a shield, a deliberate action she did not have time to analyze. He said, "You can relax now." "I am relaxed." "This is what my version of relaxing looks like." He was silent for a moment. She could feel his eyes on her. It was another trait of men like him she knew well, and it always unsettled her. They had a way of studying people with an intense gaze, seeing everything without asking a single question. He finally spoke. "Vasek told us what is in the bag." She flipped a page on the medical clipboard. "I have a pretty good guess already." "No. You do not understand. He told us who gave the order." She stopped flipping pages. She refused to look at him, but her whole body became perfectly still. How far up does this go? Far enough to ruin the next 6 months for a lot of people. He let that sink in. Far enough that the team tonight will not be the last ones sent for that bag. That made her look up from the clipboard. He was much closer than she had noticed. They stood at nearly the same height. At 5 feet 9 inches, she frequently surprised men as big as Elias. Her presence made her height feel like a deliberate choice, not a random fact. She finally asked, "Are you telling me this whole thing is not over? I am telling you that Vasek needs to get that bag to the right people, and it has to happen soon. He will require protection, and my team is going to provide it." He paused, and she sensed there was more. But the people who sent that first team will know they failed. They will know where they failed. And they will get very interested in who was in this building that was not supposed to be here. He looked directly at her. That means they are going to get interested in you. She placed the clipboard down on the counter. She moved with slow, careful precision, like someone preparing for a fight. "Are you saying I am a loose end that needs to be tied up? I am saying you should be long gone by sunrise." She stared at him for a long, quiet moment. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly. Down the hall, a patient called out for a nurse. Warren was watching them with the quiet interest of a man who had seen enough in his 70 years to know exactly what was happening. Lena said, 11 weeks ago, I came to this hospital to help people. I did not take this job because it was safe or because I thought I would be invulnerable here." She picked the chart up again. "I am going to finish my shift." Elias just looked at her. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She found that very interesting. Men like Elias Core were rarely at a loss for words. At that moment, Ghost appeared at the doorway. "We have a problem," he said. The problem was Danny Reyes, but it was not a medical one. Danzy's condition was actually getting better. His blood pressure was back to normal, and his surgery had been a success. The problem was the two soldiers Elias had posted outside his room. One of them, a man with burn scars named Pip, had found a third person in the intensive care unit. This man had no business being there after the floor was locked down. He was a hospital janitor named Gerald who had worked the night shift for 11 years. He had his ID badge, he was in uniform, and he had a perfectly good reason for being on the floor. The only issue was that Pip had found him with his ear pressed against Danny's door, listening in. When Lena and Elias got to the intensive care unit, Gerald was sitting in a chair in the hall. Pip stood over him, and another soldier guarded the exit. Gerald was talking non-stop. He seemed to understand how bad this looked, and was trying desperately to talk his way out of it. "I was just doing my rounds, that is all. I thought I heard something, so I got closer. Anyone would have done the same." Pip remained perfectly still and silent, a man completely comfortable with quiet intimidation. Gerald looked up and saw Lena. His expression shifted. It was not relief, but something that looked like it, but felt all wrong. "You have to tell them," he begged her. "You must tell them I work here. You know who I am." He was right. She did know. She had noticed Gerald many times, guiding his cleaning cart through the halls late at night, offering a quiet nod to the staff. Lena had mentally filed him away, just like she did with everyone else. His face, his build, his routines. Gerald always started his shift at 11. He always rested at 1:30. He was typically finished with the third floor by 3 in the morning, but the time was not even 1:30, and he had no business being on this floor yet. She asked him, "Gerald, which manager assigned you to begin here tonight?" He simply stared at her. "What are you talking about? Your normal route brings you to the third floor after 2 o'clock. You are here almost 2.5 hours ahead of schedule. Who told you to do that?" His panicked speech suddenly stopped. She could almost see the thoughts racing in his mind as he planned his next move, and she watched as he chose the wrong one. He tried a different lie. "I agreed to cover a shift for someone. Martinez wanted me to swap with him." "Martinez went home sick at 4 o'clock this afternoon," Lena stated, her voice perfectly calm. I watched him as he left. A tense quiet settled in the corridor. Gerald did not say a word. From behind her, Elias spoke up. "Gerald, this is your final opportunity to make things less difficult for yourself." Gerald's gaze jumped from Elias to Pip and then returned to Lena. She could see the resolve fade from his face. It was the look of a man who had no options left and was just waiting for what came next. He finally spoke, his voice low. "I was only supposed to find his room number. That is all, just the room number. I did not know what they were planning to do." He paused and swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly feeling like sand. "They gave me their word. It was only for information." "Who gave you their word?" Elias pressed him. "I do not know his name. A man phoned me 2 days ago, and he seemed to know everything about Gerald already." He looked down at his feet. When he met her gaze again, his face showed a kind of hurt that had nothing to do with his job. "He knew about my son and the debt he has with some very dangerous people. The man on the call said I just needed to make some calls at specific times and report who was on this floor. He promised that no one was going to be harmed." Lena watched him and knew the story about his son was absolutely true. She had no doubt about it. It was a standard method used by powerful figures to make others do their dirty work. They were skilled at discovering a person's greatest weakness. And with Gerald, they had certainly found it. They discovered his vulnerability and used it to control him. That did not forgive his actions, but it did explain them. Lena then asked, "Gerald, what about the phone number of the man who contacted you?" He told her the number was private. Did the call come to your personal phone or a hospital phone? Gerald's expression changed as he looked at her. She had seen that same expression on Vasek and Elias before. It is the moment when someone understands their own critical error and sees the truth. My cell phone. The number might be hidden, but the call record itself contains data. A forensics team can pull that information in about 40 minutes. She looked toward Ghost, who was positioned in the doorway. Take his phone to the person in charge of Vasek's evidence. Ghost looked at Elias, who gave a single, sharp nod. Gerald rose to his feet slowly, his attention fixed on Lena. Can they protect my son? She replied. I am unable to give you any guarantees, but if that number is what I suspect, it will give you some leverage. You have no control right now. You need to show them how valuable your information is. He nodded, and he seemed to grow older in that moment. He had made a terrible decision for a very good reason, and that weight would be his to carry forever. She knew that feeling all too well. Hawk gently took Gerald by the arm and guided him toward the stairwell. Elias was watching her. Elias had been studying her for the entire night. She was beginning to get accustomed to it, he said. You managed that situation with incredible skill. He is not a bad person. She offered a correction. He was a useful person. There is a distinction. How did you know for sure he would be honest about the phone number? Because he is not the type of person who can invent a believable lie when he is trapped. The truth was the only path he had left. She took a breath. I also noticed his hands when I brought up the supervisor. Most people will grab their phone to back up a story. He made no move to do so. He knew he lacked any proof, and he knew I could tell. Elias remained quiet for a moment. Then he finally said, You have been doing that all night long. Doing what, exactly? Understanding people as if they were an open book. She almost let a truth slip out, but she stopped herself just in time. Instead, she said, It is a helpful skill in emergency medicine. It is helpful in many situations. She met his eyes. His tone was not casual. It was purposeful. It was the way skilled operators speak when they are about to ask for something. They steer the conversation so you are inclined to say yes before the question is even asked. She cut him off. Whatever you are about to ask, just do not. I have not said a word. But you are about to. He observed her for a long while before speaking again. Danny will require protection after he is discharged. A team is being put together. The people who attacked tonight will make another attempt. The evidence in Vasek's bag is useless unless Danny is alive to give his testimony. He heard the command. He survived, and they are aware he survived, she said plainly. So you are asking me to quit my job. I am asking you to realize that your talents are not being fully used here. She almost let out a laugh, but forced it down. This was not the right time, and she worried if she started, she would not be able to stop. She recognized this sensation from her previous life, the feeling that arrives after the immediate danger has passed. 11 weeks ago, she started, I made the choice to accept this job. I know my reasons. It was not because I was worn out or had given up. I chose it because I want to mend what other people have broken. My work is not less significant than yours. It is simply different. Elias was quiet for a moment. He did not argue with her, which was a little surprising. Then he continued. Pauline is on the 4th floor. She has been waiting for 3 days to get her biopsy results. Lena became very still. How do you know about her? Marcus informed me. He told me that you sat with her for an hour last week. He paused for effect. He also told me you were the only person who did. She just stared at him. The hallway was quiet, with only the two of them and Pip at the main desk. The hospital was slowly returning to its normal rhythm. There was the constant hum of equipment, the sound of shuffling feet, and the low voices of people who were still present, still breathing, and still needing help. She said, Danny Reyes will need his bandages changed in the morning. Elias gave a nod. Following that, he will require a comprehensive discharge strategy with follow-up care. The next person on his case has to understand his injuries and treatment. I am the most qualified person in this hospital to prepare that report. You are, he conceded. So, I will complete that task first, and after that, I will provide you with my decision. He accepted her terms. He began to walk away, but then paused and turned back to her. He said, "For the record, what I said to you in the operating room, when I ordered you to leave." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I was mistaken." She watched him. That was not a simple thing for a man like him to admit. She could tell how difficult it was for him to say those words. It was not an act or a performance, but just a simple truth he had to accept based on the facts. She said, "You were doing what was necessary at the time." "No, I was being arrogant." Sometimes those two things are connected. The edge of his mouth twitched, almost forming a smile, but not quite. "No," he conceded. "I suppose they are not." She went to resume checking on her patients. Warren was sleeping, which was an excellent sign. His vital signs were stable, his skin had more color, and his hands were resting calmly on the blanket. His body finally trusted that it was safe enough to rest. Lena stood at the end of his bed, simply observing him breathe. The sight gave her a quiet and deep feeling of contentment. After that, she walked to Pauline's room. Pauline was not sleeping and was sitting up in her bed. The television screen was black. Her hands were folded in her lap, and her expression was that of a person who had tried to map out her future until the possibilities ran out. She looked toward Lena as she entered. "Is it all finished? All of that noise?" "It is finished," Lena confirmed. She moved a chair next to the bed and sat down for the first time in 4 hours. Pauline studied her for a moment. She was 61, and her face was more than just attractive. It now had a certain depth. Her face told the story of her entire life, and she presented it with grace. Pauline remarked, "You appear as though you have just come from a fight. It was a very long night. I am not referring to the hospital duties." Pauline spoke with a clarity that came from not having time to waste on small talk. "You carry yourself like someone who has handled this before, not the nursing part, the other situation, whatever it was." Lena looked down at her own hands, which she had scrubbed clean twice. "I did it frequently in my former life. Tonight was a reminder that the past is not always in the past." Pauline paused, then said, "My daughter often told me I should have become a nurse. She always says I am good at taking care of other people." She paused. "I think I became an accountant because I was scared to care that much." Lena looked into her eyes. "So, how did that plan work out for you?" A faint smile appeared on Pauline's lips. "Not so well, if I am being honest. It seems you end up caring about people anyway, whether you want to or not." "Yes," Lena replied quietly. "That certainly seems to be the way it is." They sat in the quiet room together. The heart monitor beeped its steady, comforting rhythm. Down the hall, the hospital was slowly returning to normal. That is the nature of hospitals. They absorb terrible events and just keep functioning. It is their job, and it is the job of the people who work in them. Lena thought about Elias's proposition, the evidence in the bag, the wounds on Danny Reyes, and a misty morning at Camp Pendleton. So much had happened since then. She weighed all her options, but could not find an easy path. She was still sitting right there when Pauline's phone buzzed with a call from the lab. She waited as Pauline answered, and she took her hand when the news arrived. It was the sort of news you need someone there for. It was wonderful news. Pauline's tests were all clear. There was no sign of cancer. The lump was a harmless cyst, a silent terror she had lived with for months. Now, it was just a cyst instead of a monster. Pauline began to cry with the deep, shuddering relief of a person who had been holding her breath since Thursday and could finally exhale. Lena just held her hand. She did not say everything would be okay. That is a promise no one can truly make, and Pauline was too smart for empty words. So Lena just sat with her. It was the only thing that mattered. She had learned a long time ago that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to just be present and not walk away. Lena eventually left Pauline's room just after midnight. Pauline was talking to her daughter on the phone, crying at first, then laughing at her own tears. She said thank you to Lena 3 times, and Lena accepted it graciously each time. She knew that refusing to accept someone's gratitude was its own form of cruelty. As she walked down the hall, she felt the deep, late-night silence of the hospital. It was a special kind of quiet, heavy with the presence of vulnerable people being watched over by a staff running on coffee and a powerful sense of duty. They were all there because they understood their work mattered. It always mattered. The third-floor nurses' station looked normal again. But that was only on the surface. Every piece of furniture was back in its correct spot. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm, and the charts were stacked neatly. But some vital part of the room had changed. It felt like a space after an earthquake, where nothing is physically broken but everything feels wrong. Marcus was sitting at the desk. He looked up as she approached, and his expression was completely different. It was a look she had never seen in her 11 weeks there. He was no longer looking at a capable but new coworker. This look was older, more serious, and much more difficult to understand. He simply said, "You are needed downstairs," she asked him. "What department?" "The main one. The trauma center." So she headed downstairs. Elias was waiting for her in the family meeting room, the most secure place in the hospital besides a patient's room. Ghost and Pip were already in the room, along with the man she had nicknamed Hawk. There was a fifth person she did not recognize. It was a woman in regular clothes, with a government identification badge clipped to her jacket. She sat with a rigid tension, the kind you see in people who understand that one wrong word could change the world. A bag was sitting on the table in front of her. Lena's eyes moved from the bag to the woman. Lena asked, "Who are you?" The woman replied, "My name is Carver. That is the only name you need. I was on an airplane when I got the call, and I have been awake for 22 hours, so let us please get to the point." She opened a folder on the table. Corporal Lena Brooks, 4th Marine Regiment Scout Sniper. You served 3 tours of duty. 2 of them were classified operations. You have 17 confirmed kills at long range, with many others that are not on the official books. You received an honorable discharge last November. You started your job as a registered nurse at Mercy General approximately 11 weeks ago. She looked up from the file. Have I missed anything? Lena pulled out a chair and sat down. No one had invited her to sit, but no one moved to stop her either. You missed the fact that I put my rifle down by choice. Carver's expression did not change. I did not miss it. Her tone was not mean, but it was incredibly direct. She spoke like a person who had discovered that kindness and efficiency rarely go together. I would like to know why you think that choice is not important tonight. Tonight, it is extremely important. Your performance tonight was not that of someone who was finished with that life. It was that of someone who put down a rifle only to pick up a different instrument. She waited for a second. I have to know which one you chose. Lena looked at her, then she glanced at Elias. He stood against the wall with his arms at his sides, like a man who was instructed to be there but to stay out of it. She looked at the bag on the table. She said, I chose not to be the person who ends lives. I wanted to be the person who helps them continue. The world has plenty of destroyers. I did not believe it had enough of the other kind, she went on. I still think that is true. Carver was quiet for a second, making a note in her folder. The information in this bag, she said, will launch a federal investigation. It will involve no less than 3 government departments and possibly 2 foreign intelligence agencies. The man who ordered the hit on Petty Officer Reyes is named in these documents. He is currently a deputy director at an agency I will not name. She paused again. By morning, he will know his plan failed. By tomorrow afternoon, he will know this bag exists. He will use all of his power to make sure it is never used against him. Lena responded. He already tried to do that earlier this evening. Tonight was a frantic move using whoever was on hand. The next attempt will not be so careless. Carver looked directly at her. That is why we need to discuss what will happen when you come back to work tomorrow. Lena knew what was coming. You are going to tell me not to come in. I am going to tell you that if you do, you need to know the risk you are taking. I already told Elias I am finishing my shift. Carver glanced at Elias, who remained silent. She looked back at Lena. We have procedures for this. We can move you to a safe house. No, Lena said firmly. Corporal. I am no longer a corporal, she said, her voice completely steady. I am a nurse at Mercy General. My patient on the 4th floor just found out she is cancer-free, and she needs a follow-up scheduled. Warren in room 12 is scheduled for another heart monitor check at 6 in the morning. Danny Reyes needs his dressings changed at 7, and his release papers need to be handled by 9. She took a breath. And I am the best qualified person in this hospital to manage all of those tasks. So, whatever assistance you require for this investigation, I will give it. But when we are done, I am returning to my job. The room fell completely silent. From the corner, Ghost made an odd sound, like a cross between a cough and a chuckle that failed to become either. Carver studied her for a long, silent moment. Finally, she spoke. All right. I need your detailed account of what took place tonight. Start from the moment you saw the 3 men enter the hospital. I want to know about every decision, every observation, and every action you took. We are going to be in here for some time. They were there for 90 minutes. Lena delivered her story in the same way she had been trained to debrief after a mission. It was in chronological order, it was exact, and she offered no personal opinions. She only stated what she knew for certain at any given moment. She described the location and movement of every person she observed. She detailed Vasik's injury, her analysis of it, and what it was meant to communicate as a message. She spoke about Gerald with methodical precision. Lena laid out her observations, her resulting suspicions, and her final conclusions, including the reasoning behind them. Where most people would say, I had a feeling, she consistently used the phrase, the evidence suggested. It was her way of building a statement that was impossible to dispute. Carver noted every word. Her questions were perfectly timed. They showed Lena that this was more than just a review of events. Carver was piecing together a much larger puzzle, using Lena's story alongside information from many other places. Then Carver inquired, let's talk about the shot that struck the vehicle. You mentioned a distance of about 80 meters, with a suppressed Mark 12 rifle firing through a tinted car window. You targeted the wheel well, aiming to stop the car without injuring the person inside. That was a highly specific decision. His death was not required, Lena replied. I only needed to keep him busy for 45 seconds. With a rifle I know inside and out? Absolutely. Carver made another note. Your old commanding officer mentioned your remarkable self-control. He pointed out that most marksmen take an easy shot when they see one. He said you had a special knack for knowing when to hold your fire. Lena responded. My commander was always very kind in his assessments. He called you the best he had ever seen. Her simple answer was, he was, as I said, a kind man. After an hour and a half, Carver closed the file. Her next words to Lena were completely unforeseen. I want to thank you. What you did last night saved critical lives. You also preserved proof that will expose issues that have been hidden for years. I need you to know that I understand the personal sacrifice you made. Lena met her gaze. It was not as costly as you think. No, Carver replied. I understand that. That is my entire point. And just like that, she was gone. The team began to pack up with the silent efficiency of people who have worked together for a very long time. Ghost left without a single look back. Pip, a man who spoke with actions, gave Lena a quick nod. Hawk said, "Truly excellent work tonight, ma'am." His tone was genuine and respectful. Lena accepted his words just like she did Pauline's thanks, because both were sincere, and it is always best to face reality. Only Elias remained in the room with her. She knew he was going to say something. She had been waiting for it all through the meeting, like watching a storm gather on the horizon. You do not fear it, you simply know you have to deal with it. He spoke first. "I made a few phone calls while you were occupied." "I am aware," she said. "You are?" he asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Elias, you have been in this hospital for 9 hours. You spent most of that time in the middle of a major crisis. But for the last 90 minutes, you just leaned against that wall with nothing to do. Of course, you made some phone calls." He gave her a look she was starting to recognize. It was his version of being surprised. It was subtle and controlled, but it was there if you knew how to look for it. "Gerald's son," she said. "The debt is being handled," he said. She took a moment before asking, "How?" "Carver has her ways. Gerald gave them everything, and his phone data confirmed your story. That led to a number, which created 2 more links in the chain. Gerald had been helpful tonight, even if he did not mean to be. It was only right that his son should not have to pay for his father's weakness." She said, "That was a kind gesture. It was a practical one," he replied, "but also kind. Both things can be true." He paused. "I am learning that tonight." She picked up her hospital identification from the table where she had placed it. She stared at it for a second. "You said Danny needs to deliver that bag to the right people, and that he will need protection to do it." "That is correct. And after that, when this investigation goes where Carver expects, certain individuals will need to be found. The kind of people who are experts at not being found." He let that thought settle in the air between them. It is the type of work that calls for patience, precision, and the talent to analyze a person and a situation, and then to know the right time to move and the right time to wait. She looked directly at him. "You are not describing a security detail. No. You are describing a field operation. I am talking about something that requires all of your talents, not just your skills as a nurse or a sniper. It is about blending those gifts with everything else you are. It is the ability to soothe a terrified woman at midnight and also put a silenced shot through a tire from 80 meters with only 4 minutes left on the clock." He looked right at her. "That combination is incredibly rare, Lena." She turned the plastic badge over in her fingers. It was such a small object. It held a picture, a name, a title, and a barcode that opened specific doors. 11 weeks of her entire life, summed up on a little rectangle. She asked, "If I walk out of this hospital with you tonight, who will perform Warren's 6 o'clock heart monitor check?" Elias replied, "Someone else will take care of it. And Pauline's follow-up visit, another person will do it. And the 43 other patients on this floor are in the care of great doctors and nurses who do not need me specifically." Elias said it again. "Someone else will do it." He waited. "The question is if someone else can accomplish what you can accomplish." She met his gaze. "Someone else can almost always complete most jobs. The real question is, do they perform with the same dedication? And do they?" She gave it some real thought. Sometimes, she had to admit, they even do it better. She slipped the badge into her pocket. She got to her feet. "I am going to check on Danny." He moved out of the doorway to let her pass, and she felt his presence following her down the hall. She noted the space he kept, which was greater than it had been 12 hours before, when he had placed a hand on her shoulder and ordered her from the operating room. The space between those 2 points in time was not a matter of inches or feet. It was a measure of everything that had occurred in between. Danny Reyes was conscious. She was not expecting that. She stepped into the side room and found him propped against two pillows, with his eyes wide open. The monitor chirped with a steady, stable rhythm, a confirmation of life. He wore the expression of a man who had missed the main event and was now trying to piece it all together from the clues he had. He was younger than she had imagined, perhaps in his early 30s. He was built for performance, not for pure size. He had the dense, functional muscles of a person who moves quickly in tough spots and has trained his whole body for it. His face had a look she had seen on other special operations soldiers. It was not quite toughness, but more of a serene acceptance. He looked like a man who had witnessed the worst things people could do, made a conscious choice to continue on, and had somehow found peace in that choice. He looked at her as she walked in. He said, "Are you the nurse?" "Yes, Elias told me about you." He hesitated, carefully considering what to say next. "He said you were something special." She began checking his blood pressure and intravenous lines without a word. He then asked, "The bag. Vasik's bag. Is it secure?" "It is in safe hands now," she replied. "Carver has it." He breathed out. That single breath seemed to carry a huge weight. It was the sound of a man who had been laser-focused on one single goal for a very long time and was only now starting to unwind. "I have been holding that thing for 6 weeks," he said, "since before they stabbed me. Since before I knew they had identified me." She looked at him. "The knife was their way of telling you they knew you saw the order. The knife was how they tried to frighten me into disappearing. They did not kill me because a dead Navy SEAL creates too many questions. A wounded one who keeps his mouth shut can be explained away as a training accident." His jaw tightened. They misjudged how many questions I was prepared to create. She finished taking his blood pressure. "You were the target tonight. The second device. I know. They eventually decided that the attention was a risk worth taking. I know that, too." He was silent for a second. Because Vasich made his move. Because the bag was on its way here. As soon as it reached authorities, a living witness was a danger, but a dead one could be managed. He looked her in the eye. They made their call. "The fact that I am alive means someone in this hospital made a different call," she answered. "Several of us did." He was quiet for a bit. "I heard what went down with Vasich in the North Corridor," Elias told me. Another pause. "He also told me what you said to him about staying, about being the one to fix things." She pulled his chart up on the tablet. "Your vitals are good. You should try to get some sleep. I have been out cold for 6 hours." "That is not quite the same as sleep, but it is close." He held her gaze. "I am going to testify. Whatever Carver needs, whenever she needs it. I have been driving toward this moment for 6 weeks, and the job is not finished tonight. I know. But I want you to know that whatever you chose to do tonight, whether you stay, leave, or go back, I get why it is a hard decision." His voice was low and steady, the voice of a man who had seen enough tough spots to know they rarely have simple answers. "Because I have been out in the field, and I have also been in the hospital bed. They are not as separate as people believe. Both of them demand that you stay completely focused on the immediate situation. Both of them make you care more than is probably wise." She said, "You need to rest so your body can heal from what Dr. Hartwell did." He almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." She finished with his chart and went to the door. Her hand was on the frame when he said, "Lena." She stopped. "My mother's a nurse," he said to her. "She's been doing it for 30 years, down in San Antonio." He paused for a moment. "She always told me that the hardest skill to teach is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. She said some nurses just never get it. She said the ones who do are worth 10 of everybody else." She lingered by the door for a second. She did not look back. She said, "Get some rest, Danny." She stepped back into the corridor. Elias was there. He had waited with the calm stillness of a man who knows patience, the kind of patience that does not need to be announced. She told him, I am going to prepare Danny's discharge summary and his instructions for aftercare. This will likely take about 1 hour. I must make sure his next caregiver has every piece of information they need. She paused. When I finish this, I will go and talk to Diane. Elias asked, What do you intend to say? The truth, or as much as I am allowed. That I am taking a leave of absence, and that I will be back. She looked at him with a determined face. I will be back. I believe you, he said. And she knew he truly meant it, not as a polite comment, but as a statement of fact. He said everything that way, with the confidence of a man who learned that empty words always come at a great cost. She walked to the nurse's station, pulled Danny's chart, opened the discharge summary, and started writing. The ward was peaceful and quiet all around her. The monitors continued their steady, constant rhythm. Further down the hallway, a patient moved in their sleep, and a nurse quietly adjusted their sheets. And beyond the hospital, the city did what every city does at 2 in the morning. It simply kept going. Totally unaware of what had just happened inside one particular building, she wrote the summary with precise medical terms, adding everything Hartwell would require and everything the following doctor would require. The wound's history, the surgical steps, the medication schedule, and all follow-up care were organized perfectly to guarantee a smooth transition. She wrote it just as she had managed everything else that night, with immense care and no shortcuts, knowing that the quality of this document would affect someone's well-being. That was important now, and it would still be important long after she was gone. She was in the middle of writing instructions for painkillers when Diane Kowalski walked up to the nurse's station. Diane watched her for a very long time. She looked at the chart Lena was focused on. She looked at Lena's hands and the faint signs of the night's turmoil that remained, even after being washed twice. She glanced at the consultation room door, which seemed to hold the memory of federal agents, Navy SEALs, and 3 hours of choices that no nursing school could ever prepare you for. She asked, Do you want to explain to me what happened here tonight? Lena answered, Most of it. I can tell you most of it. Diane repeated her words. She brought a chair over and sat across the counter, sitting in a way that showed 19 years of experience taught her that the most vital talks often take place at 2 in the morning across a table. Was anyone on my staff in danger tonight because of something involving you? Lena looked directly into her eyes. No, the danger was already present because of a patient. My decisions made the situation more secure. They never created the danger. Diane thought about this. The men in suits who left 20 minutes ago were federal agents. The issue was now being handled at the correct level, and the agents in combat gear from this morning were still here. One is a patient, scheduled for release in about 36 hours with a care plan I am writing at this moment. Diane stayed silent for a long time. It was the silence of a woman making calculations, not emotional ones, but practical ones. It was the kind of thinking that had run a trauma ward for 2 decades, keeping people alive and the entire department from falling apart. Diane finally asked, So, are you quitting? No, Lena answered. I am taking leave, but I plan to return. For how long? I do not know yet. Diane gave her a new look of assessment, the same one from the crisis in the hallway. 11 weeks ago, I viewed you as capable but inexperienced. I was wrong, Lena said. You were just judging by what you saw. I was only looking at the surface, Diane admitted. After 19 years, I should have known better, but I misread you. She stopped. Why did you never tell me anything? It was not connected to the work I was supposed to do, until tonight. It is now, Lena acknowledged. Diane's eyes scanned the patient report on the screen. She read over a few sentences. This is very well written, she observed. Thank you. This aftercare plan is more detailed than Hartwell's usual reports. Dr. Hartwell is a surgeon. She does not write care plans. No, Diane said. But you do. She rose to her feet, smoothing her scrubs from habit. Whiteman, I need you back here soon. I am switching you to the day shift. Days are when I need your skill for judging a situation. Lena met her gaze. I will be back. Diane gave a single firm nod, a clear indication the topic was settled. She went back to her office. Lena finished the summary at 3:47 a.m. She printed, signed, and filed the chart for the next doctor. She looked in on Warren, who was sleeping deeply, his hand resting on the blankets. She saw Pauline was also fast asleep. Her phone on the table was dark, suggesting her daughter had called and was now at ease. In the locker room, she changed out of her scrubs and into her street clothes, slowly getting used to the feel of the familiar fabric. She removed her badge from the lanyard, pausing for a second. She slid it into her jacket pocket, over her heart. It felt familiar, like other items she had carried in different pockets from a past that was not truly gone. Elias stood by the ambulance bay. Ghost, Pip, and Honk were visible through the glass doors. They moved with the sharp focus of professionals getting ready for a new stage. She went outside to join them. The air was cool, and the city hummed its usual rhythm. The hospital behind her did the same thing. She did not look back. She was not leaving for good, so there was no reason to. Looking back is for permanent farewells. The drive lasted 4 hours, taking them through places she should not be able to identify. That was not a concern. The names of places had become meaningless to her long ago. Only the direction, the distance, and her companions were important. She had checked all 3 before they pulled out of the garage. Ghost was driving the car. Pip was next to him. Hawk sat in the back, watching the road behind them. The threat was clearly not over just because they were away from the hospital. Elias sat beside her. He was awake. She knew his particular kind of alertness. It did not come from rest, but from pure discipline and training, pushing away physical tiredness. She was also awake, but not exhausted. A night like this left no room for being tired. It created a sharp kind of clarity, a temporary state she knew would not continue. Around the 3rd hour, Elias spoke. You need to rest. She answered, so do you. That was all they said. They drove the rest of the way in silence. The car continued on. She remembered Pauline's expression when she heard the positive news. She saw Warren's hands, calm upon the blanket. She recalled Danny Ria's comment about her caring too much. It was possibly the truest thing she had heard in many years. Their destination was a place she could never speak of. The people who were part of it knew where it was. Anyone else did not need to. The location was secure and had all the resources they needed. It was run by people who shared their special worldview and skills. At the first security stop, the guard saw her hospital badge, her only ID. He looked from her badge to Elias. Elias spoke 2 soft words. The guard waved them through without keeping any log. Carver was inside waiting for them. She was on a phone call, standing by a table filled with files, a laptop, and 2 coffee cups. One cup was empty, the other half drained. When Lena walked in, Carver pointed to a chair. It was a direct order from a person 4 hours into a major incident with no rest. Lena took the seat. Elias did not sit down. Carver ended her call and got straight to the details. We alerted the deputy director about the investigation at 5:47 a.m. Federal agents arrested him at 6:12. His legal team placed 3 calls to his office in 20 minutes. 2 of those phone calls were to people we also have in our custody. She took a quick breath. The package gave us the foundation. Vasek's story will confirm it. Danny's testimony makes it solid. She turned toward Lena. Your sequence of events at the hospital gave us the command structure for the raid. Our case was weak before you helped. Now it is very strong. So the situation is over, Lena said. The operation is over, Carver corrected. The full investigation might take a year or more. Her eyes moved to the table. He had accomplices. Some people actively helped him, some ignored it, and some enabled him. Sorting through them will be a massive federal job. From the doorway, Ghost added, "The mercenaries were hired through a business that was hidden by 3 front companies. We are working our way through those layers," Carver told him. "But they have been neutralized for now. Their payment depended on the deputy director staying free. And he is no longer able to pay them," Lena said. "What will happen to Vasek?" Carver met her gaze. "What about him? He came to that hospital wounded with a package. Knowing his own people might try to kill him, he is not in the military. He is not an agent. He is a person who saw something wrong and risked his life to correct it." Lena paused. "What will be his fate?" Carver's expression changed, showing not softness, but understanding. "We have him under protection. When this information is made public, we will decide on how to reward him." She hesitated. "He asked about you. What did he want to know?" "He wanted to know if the nurse was safe." Lena looked down at her hands for a moment. "Let him know that she is." For the next 2 hours, the questioning continued. The inquiries became extremely detailed, feeling more like a post-mission report than a story. They analyzed her timeline, the location of every agent, and the reasoning for each choice she made. She delivered her answers with the same unwavering clarity as before. She never guessed or added flourish to her statements. A new person came into the room holding a recorder. She looked to Elias, who gave a slight nod. This was for the official record, so she repeated it all one more time, word for word. "The truth does not change for a different audience." It was a lesson from the battlefield that had served her well in the ER. Once the man with the recorder left, Carver closed a folder. "There is one final matter." Lena waited in silence. It seemed the deputy director had more than just one secret contact. Carver swiveled a laptop to face Lena. "This message arrived 3 weeks before Danny Reyes was attacked. We had to hold on to it to keep our source safe, and were not able to act fast enough." Carver tapped the screen. "Read the very last part." Lena leaned closer to the display. The final segment was short. It listed a name she did not recognize, a set of unknown coordinates, and a file number. The personnel file number was hers. She read it again, then slowly sat back. "They knew I was there," she said in a whisper. "They knew about Corporal Brooks," Carver corrected her. "They knew a former Marine sniper had started working at the hospital 4 weeks after Danny Reyes's team relocated. They were trying to figure out if it was a coincidence or if you were onto their plan. What happened last night forced them to act." Lena glanced up for a moment. There was no puzzle to solve. She understood immediately. She just had to process what it all meant. The realization hit her. "So you were already monitoring the hospital?" "Correct," he confessed. "This was never just about Vasek's call last night, was it? You had this planned from the beginning." "The operation was already underway," Carver confirmed. "Vasek showing up just accelerated our timeline. But we had been planning this for nearly 2 weeks. They were always going to make a move on Danny before he was discharged." Carver paused. "You were noted in the strategy as a variable." From the doorway, Ghost quietly echoed, "A variable." Elias said nothing, his eyes fixed on the floor. She could see the conflict warring across his face. It was the expression of a man burdened by a heavy moral choice, the kind that follows a bad decision that costs someone their life. She said his name softly, "Elias." He finally raised his head. "You had no way of knowing. Your objective was Danny. You walked into a chaotic scene with a man bleeding to death, and you controlled the situation exactly as you were trained. You were not aware of our plan because you had not been briefed on it." She held his gaze. "Do not carry a burden that isn't yours." He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke. "You spent 11 weeks in that building with absolutely no backup." "I was in that building doing what I was paid to do," she replied calmly. Knowing that some people saw me as a random factor on a chart does not alter anything I did for 11 weeks. It only means the circumstances were more complex than I realized. That is all. He remained silent. She met his eyes, recognizing his guilt but not allowing him to claim a regret he had not earned. He eventually gave a slight nod. Okay, yeah. Carver observed them both. She wore the sharp expression of an analyst who had just filed away a new piece of intelligence about her people. She said, "We have a position available." Lena turned toward her. "It does not exist on any official document. Nothing important we do ever does. But the work is real. It is vital, and it demands a particular skill set that I have just spent 6 hours confirming you possess." She turned the laptop back towards herself. "It concerns a federal task force that is building cases on 3 more individuals within the deputy director's close circle. This role requires someone with access to medical environments, someone who can function within them without raising suspicion. It requires the skill to identify and neutralize threats in real time. It also demands the ability to make hard choices under intense pressure, without waiting for direction." She looked up from her computer. "And it requires a person who understands that the people in those hospitals, both the patients and the employees, are not just part of the scenery. They are the entire point of what we do." The room fell completely quiet. Lena finally spoke. "For how long? We do not know. This line of work doesn't run on a clock, and my job at Mercy General would still be waiting for me. On the record, you would be on a long-term medical leave. We will take care of all the documentation. You can return when this is finished." Carver studied her with piercing eyes. "If you take this offer, that is the honest-to-God truth." Lena glanced at Elias. He was watching her with the same focused intensity he had shown from the second she threw him the intravenous bag. He had caught it without even looking, but his eyes immediately locked with hers, as if discovering something completely unexpected. She had been looked at that way for her whole career. Men were always trying to size her up, to reassess her, to sort her into a box she would not fit into. She never minded that they looked. She only minded when they failed to understand that who she was a deliberate choice. It was not some result of her past. It was a choice she remade and defended every single day. She said with conviction, "I require 2 things." Carver answered, "Name them." "Vasek gets a genuine future, not just a life hiding in witness protection. I want a written guarantee of everything he is entitled to before I begin. Done." "And I need 72 hours," Carver inquired. "For what purpose?" "To return to my hospital." Carver's expression changed. It was not one of surprise, but of immediate caution. That location is part of an active investigation. However, the mission timeline can accommodate a 72-hour pause. Lena replied, "The 3 people you are targeting are not going to vanish in 3 days. And I have patients who must know that I did not just walk out on them." She let the words hang in the air. "I made a promise to a woman named Pauline that I would be there for her next appointment. I told a man named Warren that I would check on his heart condition at 6 this morning. I prepared a discharge summary for Danny Reyes that I must give to his new physician myself, so she knows the full scope of his injuries. To them, these are not small matters." She looked directly at Carver. 72 hours. Carver looked over at Elias. Elias was looking at Lena. He stated, "She is requesting 3 days to complete her shift." Carver responded, "I am aware of what she is requesting." "Then, you ought to agree," he said. "Because she is correct about the schedule, she is correct about her patients, and she is correct that it is important. And if you refuse," he added, "you will launch this new alliance by showing that the one thing she values above all else is meaningless to you." There was silence in the room. Carver looked at Lena and finally conceded, 72 hours. Lena simply said, "Thank you." She slept for 4 hours in a small room that had the distinct smell of every government building she had ever been in. It was a scent she once despised but now found oddly familiar. She awoke feeling profoundly rested, the kind of rest that comes when your body gets precisely what it needs. In the kitchen, Ghost was already up, drinking coffee and reviewing a file. He glanced up as she entered and said, "She sleeps," in a monotone voice, as if logging an official observation. She shot back, "So do you, it seems." And a small smile almost touched his lips. Elias drove her back to the hospital. She was surprised that it was only the two of them. She had been expecting the entire team, just like the trip out. But this time it was just Elias, the deserted highway, and the faint morning light. He drove with the same steady, efficient manner he brought to everything, with no wasted effort. After an hour of quiet driving, he asked, "Is it okay if I ask you something?" "Yes." "Your separation from the service, Camp Pendleton, back in November. You mentioned you decided to do something different." He kept his focus on the road. "Why did you pick a job in a hospital?" She considered how to give him a completely truthful answer. She had given Carver and the team the formal version last night, but she had not shared the full story. "Not the true reason," she said. "I had a man in my unit, Corporal Trevino. On my final tour, he took a bullet to the hip. I was the one who worked on him on the ground until the medic arrived. I just kept him engaged, kept him conscious, and when the medic finally reached us, he made it through." She paused. "He told me afterward that what kept him hanging on was not the pressure I applied to the wound. It was the fact that I did not sound afraid. He said I spoke to him like we had all the time in the world." She looked out the passenger side window. "I spent 4 years hitting targets from 500 meters. But the single memory that stuck with me was keeping one man alive just by talking to him like time was not a factor." She drew a deep breath. "I wanted to do more of the second thing," she said, "and much less of the first." Elias was silent for a very long time as the road unspooled before them. Finally, he said, "Trevino, is he still in the service?" "No, he left the year after I did. He works as a paramedic in Phoenix now." "Good," Elias said softly. "Yes," she concurred. "It is." A different kind of silence settled between them, a comfortable one this time. Then he spoke once more. "I have to be upfront with you about something." "Okay." When Carver outlined the job this morning, she made it seem more straightforward than it is. Of the 3 targets, one is active internationally. Some of this assignment will send you overseas. It could send you to places that feel a lot more like the first kind of work than the second. She looked directly at him. "You are giving me a warning. I am being exact," he corrected, with a slight hesitation. "I was not exact with you earlier in the operating room. I made a snap judgment about you, and it was a serious error. It almost cost Danny his life. I will not repeat that mistake." He focused his eyes back on the road. "So, yes, I am being exact. This type of work will not always be the second kind." She answered, "I understand, and I am still returning to that hospital for 72 hours. Once that is done, I will handle what comes next." She looked at him, her expression firm. "I have never been scared of the first kind of work, Elias. I just became weary of it being my only choice." She paused. "If I am given an opportunity to do both, then I will do both." They traveled in silence for a short while longer before he broke it. "You should know." When Carver reviewed the mission's timeline, she confirmed something without ever saying it aloud. "I know what she did not say." "Do you?" "It was about the personnel file they got their hands on," he explained. "The only reason you were labeled a variable instead of a target is that someone stepped in. A person saw that order and put a hold on your file before the deputy director's people could move on it." Lena turned her head toward him. "So that is why you had backup near the hospital, whether you realized it or not. The arrival of the SEAL team was not by chance. And sending Danny to that specific hospital, Mercy General, was no accident either." Elias remained silent. Carver kept quiet to shield her contact. But that contact is the sole reason I am alive and sitting here with you." Her eyes were fixed on the long road in front of them. "When you discover who it is, you have to tell me," he answered. "The moment I find out, you will be the first to know." She gave a slight nod, taking him at his word. She stared out the window, pondering a world where a complete stranger could look at her name on a document and choose to save her from being a casualty in another's game. The concept was almost too massive to comprehend. She considered it for a second, then let it go. There was a job to do, and she needed her full focus for what was coming. At 10:30 in the morning, the hospital came into view. She had seen it from this same perspective many times, coming in for early shifts. It was just a regular building, yet it contained 1,000 complex life stories at all times. Seeing it had always moved her in a certain way. She experienced that feeling again. It was different this time, but still tied to the original feeling, the way authentic emotions often are. Elias steered into the ambulance entrance. He shifted into park, and she started to open her door. But then he spoke her name. She paused. He told her, "That thing in the file, about you being a variable. I just want you to understand that no one who actually spent 20 minutes with you would ever use that term." She turned to look at him directly. He continued, "You are no variable. You are the most reliable and steady person I have met in years. I do not say that often." For a moment, she just held his gaze. She considered all the possible responses and knew none were needed, so she simply said, "I will meet you in 72 hours. With that, she got out of the car. Marcus was working the front desk as she came in. His head came up, and his expression ran through the familiar series of emotions she had been seeing on faces for the past day. But his final look was much kinder than the rest. "Warren has been asking for you," he mentioned. "I know," she replied. "I am on my way there." She chose the stairs. She headed straight to Warren's room, because she had given her word. It was also because Warren had put his faith in them the previous night, when both she and Elias had promised to do whatever it took. A promise like that had to be kept. Warren was propped up on his pillows, busy with a crossword. He had the peaceful expression of a man who decided how he would face his day. As she walked in, he glanced up. "Well, would you look at that?" she inquired. "How are you feeling today?" he replied. "Exactly like someone who has spent 4 days in a hospital bed. In other words, I am very eager to leave." He set his puzzle down. "You returned. I said I would. That you did." He studied her for a second. "You seem changed." "I am still me." "No," he replied gently. "You are the same person, but this is a new day." He looked at her with the profound insight that comes from a long life, seeing the story of her ordeal in her eyes. "Did you find the answers you needed?" She glanced at his medical chart before looking back at him. "I think so." "Yes." "Good," Warren responded with a nod. "That is the purpose of going through tough times." He picked his puzzle up again. "I need a word, 6 letters, meaning to show courage through pain." She thought for a second. "How about sturdy?" He counted the squares. "Too short." "Try heroic," she offered. He counted once more. "That does not fit either." She stood there by his bed, thinking about the ordeal she had just been through. She considered the coming 72 hours, the work waiting for her, and the whole hospital of patients. She reflected on the very specific and demanding career she had selected. Then, the word came to her. Valiant. Warren wrote it in. He looked at the completed puzzle. Then his gaze met hers, and a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. The kind of smile you see when the perfect answer is found. "That is it," he confirmed. She smiled back, put his chart in its place, and left to find Pauline. Next on her list was to handle Danny's release forms. After that, she went to the nurse's station, picked up the next patient's file, and got back to work. This was her purpose, and this was her identity. Nothing and no one had ever succeeded in changing that core truth. Not her time in the Marine Corps, not her deployment abroad, not a knife sent to intimidate her, and not a government investigation. Certainly not some bureaucrat who looked at her file and dismissed her as a mere variable. Lena Brooks was never a variable. She was both a nurse and a Marine. She was someone who knew that the distance between saving a life on the battlefield and saving one in a hospital was a gap she could make as small as she wanted. And she had made that choice a very long time ago.